26th, and we are going to reopen the Select Board meeting for the town of Wenham at 6:29. Present is myself, Diane Bucco, everyone.
Peter Clay.
Ben Timon.
Deirdre Parati.
Gary Cheeseman.
And we have Michelle, Joe, and Steve here as well. So we're going to start with public input. 10 minutes is reserved for public input. Anyone who wishes to address the Select Board may do so in person or by Zoom. Anybody available for public input?
Michelle Bailey.
Oh, we have somebody? Michelle.
Hi, good evening. Michelle Bailey, 2 Remington Road. I had just a few things I wanted to ask about. First one, wanted to find out if the Board of Selectmen had changed their policy on signs on public property. I noticed there's been a sign up for the Waring School on the corner of Rubley and what is that, Essex or 22, since before Thanksgiving, and it's not been removed. Okay. I also was curious, it looks like you're going to be looking at a food service license approval, and I guess, in my opinion, you have no choice but to deny it based on the fact that you denied earlier somebody permission to use Pleasant Pond for having outstanding fees. And there was one last thing on the agenda I wanted to ask about. I see that you're closing the warrant tonight, and I am concerned that an item from the town meeting last year, which was incorrectly filed, has not been refiled, so that if someone wanted to have a petition to fix that, their time is up. So I'm disappointed that that did not happen in a timely manner.
Huh. Can I ask what was refiled, what was filed incorrectly? I'm not sure I follow.
There was an amendment at the town meeting regarding term limits for the CPC, and it was filed incorrectly because the minutes were recorded incorrectly. However, KP Law has determined from the video that, in fact, the intention was that that applied to all members. And unfortunately, because you're closing the warrant tonight and we do not have the corrected wording done, if we wanted to do a petition for that, we would be unable to do it.
Got it. Okay.
Michelle, I don't think there's any, if I may share.
Yes, please, thank you.
I don't think that there's any disagreement in, that the petition was filed incorrectly and that the recording shows that, essentially supports what you're saying. And we're working through it, however, the town clerk had, some health concerns and was out for an extended period of time. And so the ball was kind of dropped on that front. However, she's back and, we're working to file it.
Yeah, but my concern is that there was some discussion about whether or not it would be accepted by the state. And so if someone were to want to correct that, they would be unable to do it in this town meeting due to the delay by the town and the mistake by the town.
Okay. I think we'll look into that. I have some questions, but we'll look into that. Thank you for those points. Anybody else?
No.
All right, no one's here. Town administrator update and town announcements, my favorite time.
So speaking about town meeting, last town meeting, we had an article to move from an elected clerk to an appointed clerk through special legislation, and that was signed just last week by the governor. So now it will show up on our local election, which is the next step. And if it passes the local election, I believe there is sort of on a 5-month overlap period, so it won't take effect for 5 months. And on the end of the 5th month, it will go from an elected position to an appointed position. We just were awarded $50,000 for a Green Initiative grant to install the mini splits at the COA. So that's, effectively electrifying the heating and cooling system over there. So kudos to Mike and working hard with getting that grant through. I just want to remind the board about the iron rail project. If you get any comments back to me, we have had to pivot a little bit. I don't think we're going to be able to afford to go with any engineering study for cost estimates on rehabbing the existing structure. However, I'm working on coming up with some sort of a gross estimate on costs associated, because the project in Hamilton with their town hall is actually very similar to what we were proposing, just, not really updating the inside, only what's necessary, in doing, essentially updating the building envelope, adding an elevator for ADA compliance, access, bathroom accessibility, things like that. So I think we can get a decent rough estimate there with that. I have got a quote from an appraiser to do an appraisal. I think what we're proposing he does, and I'd like to get some feedback from the board, so if we could think about it and get back to me. I think that to kind of serve as a benchmark, again, we could go through infinite amount of variables and what would this cost, how much is this worth, things like that. But I figure, as a starting point, to be able to go to the community and say, we have this asset and it is worth, like, here's two scenarios. You just sell it outright to a developer, let them do what they can do. It's probably the best price you're gonna get for it. Let them do what they can do by right, which is single family homes. And, that tract of land, assuming that the soccer fields, the cemetery, obviously, and the DPW and water aren't affected, so we'd make the extraordinary assumption that those would be subdivided off the parcel, and it would be the structure, the original structure, and then the upland over to the right of that. So to see the value there, and then it seemed like overwhelmingly positive results, and one of the only points that everybody kind of agreed on was that if you're going to develop anything there, the use that seemed to be most compatible in the community was some sort to continue the recreation theme. So I was going to propose doing some sort of an appraisal. Well, if we talked about it, to do appraisal with, and the other thing was to maintain the historic kind of integrity of the building envelope, maybe do something different with the interior, so to be able to sell the building and the backland to create some sort of indoor athletic facility, gymnastics, whatever, and then keep the building, sell it with the restriction to keep the building envelope looking the same. Obviously, you can repoint it and update it a little, but to have maybe 1 or 2 bedroom condos or something like that with an affordability component, and then that way it wouldn't change the view when people are driving by. It'd still have the historic structure, and then the athletic facility could be built in the back where it's kind of not seen. It wouldn't impact the fields, and it would kind of stay with the with the theme of recreational and athletic use. So let me know what you think. Again, this is not going to come back up until March, just with town meeting coming, and we just want to focus in on that. But
So you want our comments on the project?
Yeah, I forwarded an email a few weeks ago, I think, to get some comments. I haven't got any comments back
Yeah,
yet,
I'm
so
sorry.
I just want to get back to them with any concerns we have with the draft. So we met with the school building committee, Peter and I, last night, and so they're looking to have another community forum on 2/28. I believe the location is to be determined. And so basically what we're doing now is we've come up with kind of our core recommendations that are going to go to the MBTA. I believe we eliminated 2, so that leaves 12. Is that right, Peter?
Yep.
We have 12 that are going to the MSBA, but it's important, and they continued to remind us last night that these estimates and the cost estimates that have been circulated around are really just gross cost estimates based on averages to construct buildings of similar size across different communities. and that these costs can change and will change as we kind of enter this next stage, which we're going into now. We're going to be whittling the 12 down to, you know, one or a couple of preferred options. And they're also going to be actually looking at more of like interior design. So what does the layout have to be to comply with the ed plan? You know, if you have a fifth grade Spanish class, you know, to make sure they're laid out with, you know, appropriateness with the rest of the fifth grade classes and things like that. So that's kind of what we're working on now, and moving forward. So ultimately, on I think it was the 4/15, we're submitting a preferred option. So a lot's going to happen over the
April
next 2
15th.
months.
So this is not gonna go before the town meeting until a year from now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's definitely, nothing will be on the town meeting. And let's see. The governor filed her budget for the end of last month for fiscal '25. Some pretty interesting stuff in there. I mean, 3% unrestricted aid. I feel like they do that every year. They're below $100 million in supplemental road and bridge work, so that could come by way of additional Chapter 90 funding on top of the Fair Share Act money that we got. So, I mean, that could be some really good stuff for Wenham. And then she's also filing this an act called the Municipal Empowerment Act. So that has some interesting things in there, like a local option for additional excise tax, a local option to increase your hotel and meals tax.
That'll help.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, yeah,
I know.
Sorry.
Yeah. You know, some of the stuff I'm pretty excited about was they're doing a lot to clarify and streamline 30B, which can be very difficult and time consuming to navigate and ensure you're in compliance.
Is that the procurement? law?
Yeah, the procurement law. So, you know, particularly around, you know, I know with the North Shore collaborative with the IT, where Colby, who's the director of the program, is always having to get creative with financing and purchasing off the state bid list to stay in compliance. And this will, one of the changes they're proposing is to actually allow like groups of communities to bid specific contracts competitively. And I think that with that we could do better than what, you know, we're kind of held to in a best case scenario. Either going by yourself, because your two options right now are go out by yourself, each individual contract, so you don't really get the economies of scale, or go with the state bid list contract price, which just because it's on the state bid list, you'll find it doesn't necessarily make it a good price. It's just you can avoid going through the procurement process by going off their pre-negotiated rates. So I think that I think is pretty interesting and could be good. And there, you know, local options for additional property tax exemptions for seniors, and then allow for emergency spending, emergency deficit spending. So if similar to your snow and ice removal, you can spend that in a deficit and amortize it over a number of years. Will allow us to do that on a more broad range of things, so that could be helpful in the event of an emergency. And so we have harassment and discrimination training next week. Joe's organized that. It's on the 15th. So basically we have 3 groups going. We have management and supervisors, which will be from 2:30 to 4:30, from noon to 2 is non-supervisory, and 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. is all boards and committee members. So KP Law recommended we split it up into different groups because each class is a little bit different and tailored to the working relationships that those groups typically have. And that is all I have tonight.
That's a lot. You went over your time limit. So I just want to remind everybody that the election, presidential primary is coming up. That's for my other job. Also, we have a local election, more importantly, on Thursday, April 11th. And I believe there are quite a few open seats. So if anyone's interested in running for election, now is the time to reach out to the town clerk's office and take out some nomination papers. All the information, I believe, is on the website, Also coming up is our town meeting, which is scheduled for Saturday. Is that April 1st? April 1st? April 7th? No, April 1st is town meeting, right?
No, it's the 7th, I'm pretty sure.
7th? April 7th? 6th. My God, my dates are all mixed up.
We're both.
Yeah, April 6th. At 1 o'clock at Bucher. Town reports and warrants will be forthcoming, and do we deliver them? What is the plan for town? I don't remember what we do for town
I
reports.
believe historically the town tries to get them out there
Mhm.
At least 10 days prior to the.
We
is
still,
that
we
correct,
still
Gary?
deliver them?
So that, you're talking the warrant
Yeah.
booklet?
Yep. We
So
deliver that?
So we have a
The
printer.
warrant booklet, yep.
The printer prints and mails them, and there's, I'll
Correct.
have to go through my notes.
Okay.
You probably remember, but there's a street or two that does not get mail for whatever reason. And
And then
so
we-
we hand deliver
Okay.
them on those streets.
Got it. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is that the handbook, which is called what? The Town of Wenham
Personnel.
Handbook, is getting close. We've been working on it. We threw it back to the administration. Should be, do we have a date that we think that we will be able to have that by?
Soon, but I
Soon.
don't know. I mean, probably not this, this month is
Okay.
pretty full, but when we'll,
Definitely won't be here by town meeting.
no, well, I think we'll have a little bit of a lull,
Okay.
so to speak.
Once you get it out to the
Once
print.
it goes to printer.
Okay.
Because then it's kind of like hurry up and wait almost.
Okay.
You know,
All right, I'll keep my
assuming
fingers
nothing,
crossed.
Obviously, I know that I said that,
Yeah.
you never know.
Never at all. Thank you very much. Pete, do you have anything?
Nothing.
Ben?
Yes, the working group that Michelle, Joe, myself, Kate, and Kirsten are a part of for the new website is meeting next week, February 14th in the afternoon, Valentine's Day, so I'll be
Bring
bringing a
chocolate.
lot of warmth and good feelings to that meeting, where we hope to approve a vendor for the new website.
Awesome.
That's it.
Thank you. Deirdre?
So in the Master Plan Advisory Committee, the plan is coming together beautifully. I think we are in the fourth phase, so we're getting close to wrapping it up. We're actually at the point of looking at layout and design, which was kind of a fun meeting to do. It is all the strategies, vision, goals, all of it is available on the website for anyone who wants to take a look at it. Can still submit comments, but we are nearing completion, which is pretty exciting. It's been a long but good process, and we're almost to the finish line. I wanted to mention that I had the opportunity to attend the Mass Municipal Conference a couple of weeks ago, where actually the governor announced what Steve was just talking about, the Municipal Empowerment Act. It was, I have to say, it was a great experience, and it was actually very energizing and inspiring to hear from our leaders. Senator Warren spoke, Senator Markey spoke, Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Swift spoke together, which was both really interesting and also fun. It's clear they have a great working relationship, and they're really a dynamic duo. There was a lot of excitement around the Municipal Empowerment Act, and the governor made it clear that this was based on the listening tour that she did going across municipalities after her election, and it's based on what she heard in terms of frustrations and what towns and cities are struggling with, and it's really an effort to try to improve effectiveness and efficiency in town government, as well as really focusing on aid for education, more Chapter 90 funding for roads and so forth. There was also what I found particularly encouraging, a lot of energy and optimism around climate change and resilience efforts. There's a lot of funding flowing, that was clear. One of the keynote speakers was Gina McCarthy, the former Obama administration EPA chief. And she was phenomenal, really dynamic, and really helped me feel encouraged. Like things are happening, the money is there. We just need to just keep going, get to work.
That's great.
So it was great. Oh yeah, and one of the sessions I was able to attend was specifically about trash contracting, which is what we're looking at in the next year. It was extremely helpful to hear other towns' experiences. There were a lot of great tips and a lot of resources that we can take advantage of. So Steve and I are going to be talking about that further and possibly putting together a working group to think through our next steps. So that was actually really fun.
Thank you. Gary, do you have anything?
Attended Superintendent Tracy's luncheon presentation on the new school building, and would just reiterate that people need to come out on that 28th February meeting to get up to speed, because certainly for both towns, this is the largest project ever, and that people need to understand the restrictions placed by the state and what the ramifications are financially and so forth. So please come out and get informed on that. A lot of information on the school website as well.
Awesome. Great. All right, let's go right to discussion and potential vote to allow the Hamilton Wenham Garden Club to install a little free library at the garden in Pingree Park. I'll just say that I first reached out to our library director, Kim Butler, to make sure that she would be okay with this, because we have had library directors that didn't approve of the free little libraries, but Kim is very excited to have people be able to get books anywhere. So that was good to hear. I also heard that maybe they need to go to, I don't see anyone from the garden club, go through HDC for final approval for this, because it is in the historic district at Pingree Park. But does anyone have any comments on that before we decide to take a vote?
Really
Sounds
against
great.
this.
You are?
No.
Okay. Messing around. So I think that if we take a vote, Steve, you let me know, to approve it, I'm missing contingent on the HDC approval. Is that something we can do?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay. Well, thank you. Go for it.
I move to approve Hamilton Wenham Garden Club installation of a little free library at the garden in Pingree Park contingent upon HTC's approval.
Second?
Are we all in favor of this?
Do a roll call.
We have to do a roll call every time. Diane says yes.
Peter says yes.
Ben, yes.
Deirdre, yes.
Here he is.
So that's a unanimous vote for a little free library. Discussion and potential vote on a one-day liquor license for the Hamilton Wenham Mothers Club new member social at the Wenham Museum on Thursday, April 4th, which is a few days before our annual town meeting, from 7 to 9 p.m. We do have the Hamilton Wenham Mothers Club new member person in charge, Michelle Grenese, here. Does anyone have any questions for her or any questions on the event? All the paperwork is in the packet. No?
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
It does sound good. All right, I think we can go for this.
Perhaps we should get some materials about town meeting and hand out at the event.
Oh, can you make a note of that?
That's great.
Drop off at Michelle Grenese's all the warrant so she can bring them to that social.
All right, I move to approve the one-day liquor license for the Hamilton Wenham Mothers Club, new member social, at the Wenham Museum on Thursday, April 4th, 2024, from 7 to 9 p.m.
Second?
Any more discussion? I'll vote yes. Diane?
Clay says yes.
Ben, yes.
Deirdre, yes.
Here he is.
That's another unanimous vote. Thank you very much. Thanks for taking the town meeting materials there, too. That'll be awesome. Discussion, she's not here. Discussion and potential vote to sign a letter of support for the Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR, legislation. And that, I believe, Deirdre, you could explain it just a little bit
Yes.
for us?
I will do that. So I've been in communication with Sharon Kashida, who is retired from the Mass Department of Environmental Protection and now working with a nonprofit called the Massachusetts Product Stewardship Council. And what this group is doing is trying to push forward legislation that would basically advance recycling, and specific in the state. Specifically, there are bills pending on paint, mattresses, and paper and packaging. The paint legislation is moving forward, as I understand it right now, the quickest. I believe it's gone to the Ways and Means Committee. And basically what towns have been doing have been writing letters of support to basically tell our lawmakers that we endorse this legislation and we would like to see it passed. So what I've done is take the sample letters from a couple of other towns and create a Wenham version that I would request that we sign. That would go to Senator Tarr, as well as Representative Sally Cairns, who is on Ways and Means, and Jerry Paracella, basically just endorsing this legislation. It's really a win-win. It removes these products, paint from the waste stream, where right now you have to like dry it out and throw it in the trash and all those cans and so forth. This actually creates a process where all of that gets recycled. And there's like a 75-cent or something charge when you buy a can of paint, and that helps to go fund the recycling of it. There will be collection points and so forth where you can bring the actual paint plus the cans, and all of that is removed from the waste stream. Same thing would happen with mattresses if that gets passed, paper and packaging. So it's both attempts to reduce packaging and also pull these items out of the waste stream. So I think it's a great cause, and given what we're facing in terms of escalating trash costs in our town as well as across Massachusetts, the landfills are filling up, the incinerators are at capacity, it's a huge problem. So anything we can do to pull things out of the waste stream and recycle them would be a huge contribution. Yeah.
So
So that's-
my first question is, one of the sample letters was from a Board of Health, right? Would that be advantageous to see if the Board of Health would also be able to write a letter, or should we just do one from the town?
I think as many letters as can only be helpful. I
It has
don't
to be
know.
soon.
I think in some towns, it depends on which sort of body picked it up and ran with
Okay.
it. That's my impression.
Get it?
But coming from the select board, I think, representing the town, it has certain import.
I don't see any downsides to doing this. I think it's a great idea.
Could you, Deirdre, just forgive me if you talked about the timing, but is there time sensitivity to sending in this particular letter in terms of like the legislative session or anything like that?
There's some, from what I understand from Sharon, yeah, February-ish is what they're pushing for, because it, as far as I know, paint has gone to Ways and Means, and they're trying to basically move these things forward. And because they're pending, they're trying to like keep the pressure on,
Yeah.
particularly with paint, which is the closest to being passed. But apparently takes a lot to pass legislation in Massachusetts, which I didn't know.
Everywhere. Takes a long time to do everything.
Yes, so.
Ready to go?
Did you have another comment?
Sounds good.
I think it sounds great, and I have no doubt that your description of the legislation is accurate. Personally, I'd like to read the bills first, just for myself. It's probably more the attorney in me than anything else that before I would say, yes, let's support it, I would want to read the actual legislation.
Do you want to abstain?
So I might abstain for that reason, but, or maybe we could put it on the next agenda just to have time to read the legislation. But I also obviously wouldn't raise a stink about it passing if the rest of the board wants to pass it tonight.
Well, I have some nice flyers you could look
Yes.
at while we're talking.
We have time?
And also, if the Word version is available, the legislation is linked in the Word version,
In the
so you
Word
could
version,
just click
okay.
and read.
Yeah.
Not necessarily right now, but
Right.
Definitely not now. We're busy doing
we
stuff.
have a lot of other things to do.
Yeah, so
That's
let's
just my
take a
own
motion and see that makes sense.
I move to approve and sign the letter of support for the extended producer responsibility EPR legislation.
Second?
Okay. Any more discussion? I'm going to vote yes.
Clay says yes.
Abstain for the reasons that I stated before.
Deirdre, yes.
Gary, yes.
Okay, so it passes 4
Do you want some flyers?
to 0 with 1 abstention. Thank you. Discussion and potential vote to approve and sign, I'm sorry. Discussion and potential vote to accept a Spring Hill Farm Road and Angus Circle as a public way. So I'll start by saying it made me a little bit nervous because there was a lot of reading, legal stuff that I got a little stuck on, but Margaret is here and she can sort of explain that this is the first step for this situation to happen, and if and when we approve it, it goes to the planning board for them to do their due diligence before it would come back to us to go on to a town meeting warrant.
I would also say, as a planning board member, we've beaten the hell out of this project a number of times.
Meeting
We've discussed it at length.
at length. Margaret, do you want to add? Dana's here now.
So this is the first step. You're not voting to accept this street at this point. You're essentially voting to refer it to the planning board, and the planning board will do their due diligence to determine whether the road is ready for acceptance. And then they'll send their recommendation back to you. You will then have another meeting where the public and anyone that we have to take an easement from will be notified before you decide to put it on the warrant for town meeting. If you were to decide to put it on the warrant, you could even do it tonight if you wanted. And then if something happens during our review process that we determine it's not ready, you can always pass over it at town meeting. So I guess it's up to the board.
Do you think that the planning board is going to have enough time?
Yeah, we should have enough time. This project is a little unique. It was a superseding order of conditions, which means DEP managed the conservation piece of it. Our local conservation commission was not essentially involved in the project. So we are waiting for the DEP to determine whether they're going to issue their certificate of completion on the notice of intent that was filed with, on the superseding order of conditions. They did go out the other day, so we suspect that they're going to issue that, but I don't know for sure when that will happen. We were advised by town council that if DEP for some reason did not issue their certificate, that we should not accept the road because it would indicate it was not ready. If we will know more, in the next week or so, whether that's going to happen. The planning board does have the authority to hire an outside consultant, which we've done, to review the project. They'll go out, they'll inspect the road, the drainage, stormwater systems, and also all of the conditions in the planning board decision have to be met. So those will all have to be determined by the planning board. And it's on their agenda for Thursday, so we will discuss it. They'll kind of give us the push to go ahead and get all of this review done, and it should be ready for their March meeting, for them to make that recommendation back to you, which I think is within the time frame. So the planning board review should be submitted to you by March 11th. That's our deadline for doing that, and they will have it by then.
Okay.
So, because that would have to go, if it's March 11th, it would have to go on the warrant, out to print on the warrant. It would have to be moved over at town meeting if they decided to not go forward.
Is March 11th too late to put it on the warrant for the printing?
Yeah, well, I guess the two options are to add it to the warrant and it wouldn't be
Okay.
on the warrant that went to print, or put it on the warrant that went to print, and the risk
And
would
then
be
pass over if we
you
don't.
may have to pass over.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a question. Margaret, my understanding was as part of this development, the developer was required to create some affordable housing units. Is that
Yes.
still an outstanding issue?
Well, the developer created one unit, and that's counted on our SHI. As it's not part of the subdivision, but it was a small building that was part of the property. They also donated a lot to Habitat for Humanity. My understanding is Habitat for Humanity plans on submitting an application to the ZBA for, I think, what would be considered a friendly 40B for a 2-unit building. We don't have that yet, so it'll be the planning board's purview to determine whether that condition is met or not.
Okay, great.
Motion?
I think we should take a motion.
Thank you.
I move to declare intent to lay out the way as a public way and refer the layout and plan titles, Street Acceptance Plan, Spring Hill Farm and Angus Circle, Wenham, Mass dated December 8th, 2023, to the planning board for their review process.
Second?
I will vote yes.
Clay says yes.
Ben, yes.
Deirdre, yes?
Gary, yes.
That's a unanimous vote to move forward with that. Thank you. I have to.
Ready? Good.
Okay. I have to take it out of order quickly. I see that Dana Alara, the school committee chair, is here. So I'm just going to jump down to G and have a discussion and potential vote to reopen the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District Agreement for purposes of negotiation. I will start this off by saying at the Quint Chair meeting, that's the FinComs of both communities and the Select Board of both communities and the school committee, we mentioned it and discussed it, and everyone was very agreeable to open the agreement and go through it to make some changes that are long overdue. But Dana, did you have anything to add?
Dana, speak. Yeah, just what would bring it, just, you know, for context, I believe the agreement was drafted originally in 1959. From my understanding, it has been amended, you know, by way of, I guess, supplemental amendments, and that they're, you know, just affixed to the back of the original. And so it makes it very confusing, and also there's a lot of current practice that I believe it doesn't match what was in the original document. And from a community's perspective, I think both us and Hamilton would like to come up with a way that can, I guess, safeguard us from wild budgetary swings in any given year due to the student population changing of the assessment, which is currently determined with a rolling 3-year average. And from what I gather, in order to open up this agreement for discussion, it needs a vote from all parties, so the school district and both select boards. And that's why Dana's here. She can add some additional context, if she's much more familiar with this than I am, if she has anything to add.
Hi, Dana, do you have anything to add?
Hi, can you all hear me?
We can.
Okay. And it doesn't look like you can see me, and that seems fine, I guess.
Okay.
That was, I think that Steve really did that was good. Sort of general overview. I don't know, one of the things that we wanted to highlight is the election procedures. And the current procedures as listed in the current regional agreement no longer conform to Mass General Law. And a couple of years ago, some school committee members spent some time with the town clerks, really trying to get clarity about how to fix that. And the answer is that it's a little bit complicated to get that fixed. And then there's just a lot of other things that are just pretty antiquated, things about, that things must be published in our local newspaper, antiquated language, things like that. But overall, I think it's long overdue to have a real review. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any, but I think that's where we are.
Thanks, Dana. I don't think we're going to have any questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Just, has the school committee voted to open?
Yeah, so this is a great question, is that the school committee has voted to open quite a while ago. We've been talking about this off and on for a while. So the school committee is ready to discuss, and our attorney, and I imagine that yours would say the same thing, it has really assured us that, what we've agreed to do is sit down and talk. The agreement itself remains in place as is unless and until we all come to any new agreement. So, that's all we're really, at this point, that's all we're really agreeing to do is sit down and talk and go through the agreement.
Great. I think we can have a motion.
I move to reopen the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District Agreement for purposes of negotiation.
Second.
It's been seconded. Any further discussion? I'll vote yes.
Clay, yes.
Ben, yes.
Deirdre, yes?
Gary, yes.
Select Board of Wenham has voted unanimously to reopen the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District Agreement, contingent upon the school committee and the Hamilton doing the same. Thank you. Thanks, Dana.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back. Discussion and potential vote to sign a letter to Don Bannon. May I see?
We all did.
May I see the letter? Because I didn't finish that anyway, but I'd just like to read it.
Oh, good.
I think it was very well written. Don just resigned. And it's to Mr. Don Bannon. Thank you for your service to the town of Wenham. Dear Don, the Wenham Select Board would like to take this opportunity to express our sincere appreciation for your service to the town. Throughout your 20 years of volunteer service to Wenham as a member of the Historic District Commission from 2007 to 2024, the Long Range Planning Committee from 2004 to 2006, the Town Hall Police Station Building Committee from 2005 to 2013, the Community Preservation Committee from 2008 to 2009, and the Building Committee from 2014 to 2015. You made many lasting and important contributions towards preserving and protecting the town's distinctive characteristics, including its buildings, architecture, and historically significant places in Wenham. In recognition of your magnanimous efforts, the Wenham Select Board wishes you will accept a framed photograph of the renovated Wenham Town Hall, for which you gave talent and time. On behalf of all the citizens, thank you. We don't have a picture of that photograph, though.
Yes, the photograph's ready, right?
Oh, it's upstairs. We don't have it down here, but we have all signed it, so we will take a official vote for that, but I think that was a really well-written letter for someone who really deserves that gratitude. So thank you for doing that.
I move to sign letter of appreciation to Don Bannon.
Second?
I vote yes.
Clay says yes.
Yes.
Deirdre, yes?
Gary, yes.
It's a unanimous vote for the letter to Don Bannon. Discussion and potential vote to grant or deny a food service permit to 36 Essex Street, Wenham, under locally adopted. Under locally adopted at the April 2016 town meeting, Article 11, Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 57, which says local licenses and permits, denial, revocation, or suspension for failure to pay municipal taxes or charges. So I'm going to throw this to you.
So new piece of information, this afternoon, we received a check, and I got confirmation from our treasurer collector that we received a check that brought this property into, I guess, compliance of the mutually agreed upon payment plan that was entered by both the Water Commission and the individual. And they also paid any outstanding water charges that were in arrears for this year. So,
Okay.
I believe that there is still, obviously there is still a balance due, but the town did enter the agreement, in there, they've fulfilled their end of the agreement up to this point.
They're complying with the terms that the town and them have set up as of today.
Yeah, so my recommendation would be to not deny. And in this particular case, it is a food permit renewal application.
Okay. And all the paperwork was in here?
But if the board has any discussion.
Yeah.
Is the permit before us tonight?
Yeah, I didn't see it in here.
I didn't see it.
No, the permit is not in there. It's a
Okay.
food service. We do it annually.
Okay.
And they have to, every organization that serves food has to file and renew their food service permit annually. And Bobby Cody, our health inspector, goes out and does the inspection.
Okay.
However, it was brought to my attention when Bobby Cody was assembling the appropriate paperwork, which has, one of it is to check for any past due balances through the accounting office, and that was highlighted. And then this local adoption of this Mass General Law was brought to my attention, and that's why it's here before the select board. Because
Okay.
ultimately, I think it doesn't require you to, deny or revoke, gives you the option to. So I didn't want to issue the permit without the board's blessing in this case.
But do we have to vote to grant the license?
No vote.
We don't
So-
need to vote? I thought we were voting.
Well, you can vote to grant. Actually, yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
Probably want to vote
Yeah, so we have
grant
to, so unless, is there more
it. I don't know
discussion?
if there's any comments or discussion more broadly.
Could you just clarify, is it just the water
In this,
account? that-
yes.
Okay,
Yep, this is a tax exempt property,
right.
and the only outstanding charges that have to do with the town is water.
And there's an operative payment plan
Yep, signed by both parties.
signed by both parties, which is now
Up to date.
up to date in terms of payments.
So I would like to entertain a motion to grant the permit.
I motion to grant a food service permit to 36 Essex Street, Wenham, under locally adopted at the April 2016 town meeting, Article 11, Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 57, local licenses and permits, denial, revocation, or suspension for failure to pay municipal taxes or charges.
Second.
Well, we don't need all that. We could just vote. Who? Okay, hold on. But the motion is just to grant the food, to grant
Right.
the annual food
Yeah,
service.
it's just the food
permit.
service, the
Yeah, so we
food
don't-
service license.
The food service license. We don't need the rest of it.
236 Essex Street in Wenham.
Yes,
Yep.
boom.
Okay,
So-
sorry, I have a couple of questions.
Oh, wait a minute, did we have a second?
Yeah.
Yes.
We had a second, okay, so we can open it
Yeah, I
up for
did.
discussion.
The food license is for a year?
Yes, yep, has to be done annually.
Okay. So if the payment plan falls apart, 2 months from now, that would be brought back to our attention?
I don't think it
Well,
would.
that would be, right, so at that point, it would be a revocation.
Revocation.
And the board would, right, the chair would have the ability to bring it back, have a hearing and entertain revoking the permit.
I guess I want to make sure there's some loop that connects the dots,
Yeah,
that if we
understood.
approve now, but then the payment falls off
It
2 or
can
3
be-
months
It
from
can
now?
be revisited.
It can be revisited.
Yeah, as far,
And
my
how would-
understanding is,
Yeah, how would we know to revisit it?
Well,
we could just.
if I could,
Yes, please.
would the treasurer collector would report, there's a payment schedule in place, right? So the payment, the treasurer collector would report to the town administrator and to the chair that's once, again, in arrears.
I guess once we issue the license, we've lost our leverage, right? So I'm just trying to clarify where there's leverage going forward.
I think of the same leverage.
Okay,
Because you can revoke it.
You can revoke
It can be revoked
okay.
if we hear that the payment plan is not working.
Also, just as a matter of process, Steve and I talked about this already, but the statute calls for a notice and hearing process for the property owner in this case. So there would be notice given before any action, before we could take any action under the statute of revocation, suspension, etc. There'd be notice sent to the property owner, and then I think within 14 days of the notice,
A public hearing.
or
Right here.
or maybe it's no sooner than 14 days from the notice, I forget, there would be a public hearing, so that would all happen before any vote could be taken.
Good to keep in mind. So yes, so it's something to keep aware of, for sure.
And do we have the amount that's still outstanding?
I don't have the exact amount, but I
Roughly.
want to say it's a little less than 10 grand.
Okay. Thank you.
I believe there was 18 and change outstanding, and we got a check for 9,101 today.
Okay.
So we have a motion
Motion.
and a second and discussion. And Michelle, if you have a quick comment, we're happy to listen.
Yeah, I missed the meeting where there was the request for Pleasant Pond, and that I knew the people were denied because they had something outstanding. But I do believe that the intent of that town meeting vote was that if people were not fully paid, that they would not be eligible to get licenses. And the fact that there's a payment plan indicates that that person had not paid for quite some time. And it's a history of that particular property not paying their rental at the soccer field until they need a license. So you have a pattern here that's not really kosher with what is intended by the town meeting.
By the town meeting vote. Understood. Thank you. That is a good point, and I think we should think about that. Personally, this is the school, right? They have to feed the children at some point, so if we keep an eye on it, and then if there's an issue, I think we go through the next process, which would be a notification, a public hearing, and then go forward. Okay.
Right.
Do you-
I'd also point out that the statute and the bylaw that was passed that adopts the statute, uses the verb may rather than shall, so it is a discretionary matter for the select board.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? Thank you. Okay, so we have the motion to grant, seconded. I say yes.
I say yes. Clay says yes.
Ben, yes.
Deirdre, yes.
Gary, yes.
So that's a unanimous vote to grant the food service permit.
Although maybe we could just request sort of a regular update so that we know that it's continuing.
So
Rather-
whatever the terms are at
Yeah.
the next two, you would let us know if there's
Yeah, no problem.
a situation. Thank you.
Or if it's on track. I mean, I think that's good to know, too.
I think it should be no news is good news, so they don't have to report back. Why ask somebody to do that? If they're staying up and they're current,
Yeah, I
Then-
guess because of the history and that it's a
it's
payment
when
plan. It's
when
not
they're
a
not
standard.
current, that's when, as Gary says, we immediately know.
Well, I think Michelle's point is that there's history because there's a payment plan in place. So if it was just
A one-off.
a one-off,
It's a little bit different.
right, that's what
Okay.
I'm
Plus,
saying.
Steve, I mean, it's not that the private property owner is being asked to report. I mean, Steve's going to know based on conversations with the treasurer collector.
Right.
Whether or not
It's
a
an
payment's
internal.
come in.
Right,
I
so
think
it's not
just-
them that, right.
Yeah, I think it's just an internal check.
Right.
So, yes, yes, yes.
All yeses, unanimous vote to grant,
Done.
All right.
with some follow-up from the TA Steve. Discussion and potential vote to consent to KP Law representing Wenham with regard to Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District Agreement pursuant to Rule 1.7 of the Massachusetts Rules of Professional Conduct. This has to do with opening the school agreement, correct?
Yes.
And so KP Law is our counsel, also Hamilton's counsel. So there's a letter in here that makes it okay and understands that they would be looking at Wenham's best interest as well as Hamilton's best interest. And we just have to sign off on that. Did
Yeah,
you
the
have
email
something
I
to
sent to clarify a question Deirdre brought up earlier today, I thought was a good question, was that Lauren will be our representative, Tom McInerney will be Hamilton's representative, and they do not foresee our interests being in conflict. However, if they do, then they will refer us both to special counsel, so that it will, go outside the firm. So that's that. So it's not Tom McInerney isn't,
Doing
working on
both.
both of us. It's Lauren and Tom. They just work for the same firm.
Any questions, comments?
Question.
Question.
Just for those of us who are not engaged in the legal profession, I just wanted to hear from Ben. Is this standard procedure
Yes.
at a law firm, and this is appropriate?
Yes, it is. Yeah, the way that Steve just outlined it is the conventional way that would happen. If interests are no longer aligned, then there would need to be that special counsel that comes in and
Great.
makes the decision.
Ready?
Let's take a motion.
I move to consent to KP Law representing Wenham with regard to the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District Agreement pursuant to Rule 1.7 of the Massachusetts Rules of Professional Conduct.
Second.
Any more discussion? I vote yes.
Clay, yes?
Ben, yes?
Deirdre, yes?
Gary, yes.
A unanimous vote for KP Law to represent Wenham with regard to the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District. Potential, discussion and potential vote to appoint members to the Climate Action Committee. This is our audience. Thank you all for coming. That is wonderful.
So exciting.
So, we put out we formed a committee, and have a charge and a plan, and then we made an announcement for volunteers, and we have 8 or 9 altogether. So when I looked at the list, I didn't know everybody, so I started calling and checking in and just making sure that they were aware, finding out who was comfortable in a town committee, who's never been on a town committee. Everyone is definitely very engaged, enthusiastic, and eager to help bring Wenham into sustainability, climate action plans, all this stuff, and so that's very exciting. Everybody has different backgrounds, really good. I have 2 things to bring up. One, we have a lot of awesome people, and we made the committee for 5. So one of the things I want to bring up is, do we want to increase the membership? And if we want to increase the membership, we need to talk about the pros and cons of a 5-member board versus a 7-member board, because there are differences, right? Just as there's differences with a 3-member board to go to a 5-member board. I just want to bring that up. My bigger concern, and then I have a question too, my bigger concern is all these awesome people, there's not a lot of people that have town committee experience. So it concerns me, and it concerned me before we even made the committee, of who is going to assist, who's going to help schedule the meeting, write the agenda, take the minutes, follow all the proper Robert's rules, open meeting law, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my concern. That was my concern before, and why I was kind of pushing it to July in hopes that there would be more staff support available. And then before I pass it off, I don't recall, what are the terms? Did we stagger the terms? We did stagger, so we did 2-1-2, something like that? Do we remember?
2-2-1.
2-2-1, wasn't it?
2-1.
2 for 1 year, 2 for 2 years, and 1 for the 3 years, I believe. Is that the way we staggered?
I think so.
Yeah.
2 for 2, 2 for 3, 1 for 1?
No, 2 for 1.
2 for 1, okay.
2 for 2,
Okay.
1 for 3. Is that
Interesting.
correct?
Oh, I thought it was the opposite.
Well, we better check.
We better check that. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we didn't
have
do
that
them
from
all
the
as 1 year.
previous minutes.
Okay, so those are my concerns, those are my ideas, those are my comments. I'm throwing it out. Deirdre had her hand up first.
So first, I want to say I'm beyond thrilled, okay, if that's not clear, beyond thrilled. Like, this is a stellar group of candidates, and I want to say thank you to all of you so much for stepping up and being willing to take this on. This is, I think, a great day for Wenham. And I'm going to reframe what Diane just said, and I think it's a complete win that there are so many people who have not previously been engaged with town government who felt compelled to come forward.
True.
And I think that is huge. That is, I can't possibly overstate that enough. I think that we collectively can help people to get up to speed on OML and taking notes and all of those great things that are part of being a member of municipal government. So I see it as doable, and I think this is a phenomenal win for the town, and I'm really proud of Wenham, honestly. And I'm fully supportive of going to 7, because that was initially what I had envisioned, but I think we were hesitant, not knowing what the response would be, and I think now we know. And I think the more people that are willing to work on this issue, the better. It's a big issue. There's a lot to do. The money is out there. That's what I heard at the Mass Municipal Conference. We need all the help we can get to figure this out and to get some momentum to move forward. That's
I
my
would just say
speech.
ditto.
Ditto. There you go. Man of many words. Gary, Ben?
So I think there's 2 questions here. One, expansion was not on the agenda tonight, so we'd have to roll that to the next meeting. And also, on the Human Rights Committee, we had a student rep. And I think tonight, I don't think Alex is 18. Did anyone check?
17.
Yeah, so in that case, that appointment cannot be made. So you-
Bylaws say have to be a resident, doesn't say a registered.
But we can't vote. We went through this with the Human Rights Committee, so you could put them on the
Ex
committee.
officio?
Well, yes, you could go that route, or you can put it on as an official member, as a student, but without voting rights. So that's what we did on the Human Rights Committee. So there's a student representative, or we should say, under 18 age member of the committee officially, but because the Mass state law does not have an official vote. So if there's
I
a
know that.
information or maybe a suggestion to move from 5 to 7, and also, add a student or under 18 representative, that we could bring that to the next meeting, and I think our voting or selection process would be a lot easier at that point.
I support everything that Deirdre said. I thought you said it eloquently, and I, too, want to add my thanks to everybody who volunteered for this important committee. I think it's great, and I would support, at the appropriate time, I guess, at the next meeting, expanding the board from 5 to 7 and adding a student non-voting position for Mr. Moldavian.
Okay, negative Nancy here, because that's what I'm starting to feel like, but I'm so sorry. What happens when our under 18 member becomes 18 and wants to be able to vote?
Well, then, as we saw on the Human Rights Committee, that it usually requires a new member appointed each year. So we would make the under 18 slot an annual appointment, as
Okay.
opposed to a 1, 2, or 3-year
Okay.
appointment. So it'd be an
Okay.
annual appointment in anticipation that usually, high schooler would graduate, in June, and which aligns very nicely with the 1 July renewal of the committee structure. So each year we'd have a new under 18 rep appointed.
Okay, that makes sense. So, we have Lucy, Matt, Tom, Chal, Alex. Alex is our underage, our youngin. Sue, Bob, who has pulled himself out of that race, Colby, and Gunther, who's not on this list.
You said Bob Mose pulled himself out?
He did.
Yes.
He did. He said there seemed to be enough people, and he would be happy to be an advisor that they can call on every time they meet.
Okay. That's surprising.
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, it's 7 plus 1.
That's 7 plus 1. So this is how I think we should go forward. I think we should let everyone know here that we want you on the committee. Sorry, Sue, you can't back out. And maybe so we have some choices here, 3-year, 2-year, 1 year. And I think it would make it easier for us to appoint everybody at our next meeting if you would let us know what would work best for you.
If you have a preference.
If you have a preference. Like if someone, is that all right with you? Otherwise, we'll just randomly choose you for 3 years. Make it all 3 years. So we will have to do the official appointments next meeting and increase the membership. We will review the charge. And I know you guys are all going to do great. I have no qualms about that, but it might just be a little bit of a rocky start on when you're going to decide when you're going to meet, where you're going to meet, how you're going to meet, and making the agenda. But hopefully you can get some assistance from the town clerk on that, and Michelle for scheduling, right? So are we good with that?
And we'll reach out and get preferences if anybody has.
So thank you guys all. Oh, we have a question?
So,
Miss Petrolia.
What are we supposed to do about the 321 reach out to you?
Yeah, we'll send out an email tomorrow, and then you can just reply back with your preference if you have one.
I can't talk for 1 minute.
Oh, my God, really? I'm so sorry.
Like, we didn't do enough talking.
So I'm Sue Petrolia, 6 Eaton Road. I've been around town for a while. I wanted to do 2 things. I really wanted to say thank you also as the founding member of Hamilton Wenham Climate Action Team, who 1.5 years ago on my birthday spent the night trying to get you guys to approve the proposition, the resolution. I'm so excited there's so many people, right? We were like, who the hell is ever going to do this? So that's great. But secondly, Sharon Kashida, who you mentioned, who is with that nonprofit who's pulling stuff out of the waste stream, she was a huge proponent of Hamilton and Wenham and the organic recycling. So she was like one of the 3 main people who could push that through, and that made Hamilton and Wenham the first pickup organic recycling towns east of the Mississippi.
wow.
So that was about 13 years ago. So I just wanted to give Sharon a shout out. And that's all.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you very much. All right. Anything else on that? All right.
Thank you, everyone.
You need a
You bet.
motion? to
Thank you,
roll
thank
that?
you for taking my calls and emails and stuff like that,
We
too.
need a motion to roll that to the next meeting?
I don't
Or
think
do-
so. No, let's just,
All right,
we-
Chair's just going to table it.
we're gonna, right, we're gonna have Steve put it on our next meeting. Every time I say that, he's like, there's no more room. Okay. Discussion and potential vote to sign the letter of support for the CPC committee land acquisition application, which is in our packet, which is a definite, in my mind, I think it's a great preparation for everything, but do you have anything to add to that, Steve?
No, I just think it would go a long way with the CPC to know that the full board is in support, if they are. I do think it's,
Do they have a property they want to buy?
well, the application is basically
Just in case.
it's 2 parts. It's 6 properties. It's the top 6 properties that remember the Open Space and Recreation Committee put together a matrix.
Right,
So it's
yeah.
the top 6 properties that came out of that study as being the most advantageous for the town to conserve. Like, obviously, there's more properties, but at least this is a kind of a start, right? So it would be, the ask of the CPC is to allow, well, for them to appropriate the debt service on a set amount. So the request is $2.7 million to be borrowed over 20 years, which would equate to be about, I think it was $250,000-ish per year in debt service. However, there's no money spent until a property is, hypothetically, if one of those 6 properties came for sale, the second piece of it was, in this next town meeting, is there'd be 2 articles. There'd be one in the CPC to grant the CPC authorization to utilize CPC funds for the debt service. The other article is to grant the select board authorization to acquire in name of those 6 addresses and issue the debt up to $2.7 million against CPC revenue. And I think, Kate and I have gone back and forth a lot. They also have a request to transfer about $1.5 million into the open space fund, the conservation fund, which sounds like a lot, but, we've benchmarked ourselves against other communities who value open space generally put in, their 10% every year into the conservation account, so they have balances that far exceed our request. And all this is done to position us to be competitive in the event that a piece of land goes for sale, because the best, obviously we have the right of first refusal if the property is enrolled in chapter land, but that's kind of like it's best to, if you can enter negotiations prior to it going to the right of first refusal.
Got it.
Generally, it can be more advantageous, and if we have capital behind us, we have pre-authorization for borrowing, and we have, cash. I think the potential sellers are probably, will be able to take us more
So,
seriously.
if this actually works, Leo Mastronzi's going to be very happy that CPC money is actually buying land.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I agree.
Okay.
So are there any questions on that before we do a motion?
I had one question and one just minor comment. I thought it is a very well-written memo. Thanks for putting it together, Steve, if you're the one who wrote it. So in the third paragraph, second line, it says seeking CPC authorization for debt service. I think based on what you just said, it really is authorization authority that the CPC has on this matter as opposed to just a recommendation. Is that right?
Yeah, well, actually, that should be changed now that you read it out loud. It should be, they're not authorizing the debt.
They're
town
authorizing
meeting's
the spending
authorizing-
of the CPC
Yeah,
funds.
CPC
Okay.
funds.
Right, okay, so it should be seeking CPC authorization for expenditure of,
Oh, yeah, authorization for
CPC
debt,
funds.
yeah, for debt service.
okay. Well, that's what it says now.
Associated with the purchase with these properties. So now I'll read it again, but the way you just read it, it sounded like we were asking them for, debt authorization. But they're granting permission to issue the
Yeah.
debt, but that's not it. It's the select board that would be issuing the debt
Yes.
through the separate warrant article.
Right.
The request to them is only to let us borrow against their revenue,
Mm-hmm.
which is the CPA surcharge.
Okay, yeah, so maybe
Yep.
just that clarification. And then the last paragraph, similar thing, it says, we urge you to approve this grant application. That's the right way to put it, right? That they have approval authority over the grant application.
Yeah, so this is right, that's them, well, yeah, so they approve the application, and by approving the application, they make the recommendation to town meeting, and town meeting ultimately approves the expenditure of the CPC funds.
So you could just change, I urge you to recommend this to town meeting. Instead of approve it.
Yeah, okay.
Take one step out.
And then my just minor comment was in the second paragraph, maybe we should just say Open Space and Recreation Committee, where it says OSRC, just some people might
Spell it
not
out.
know
Spell it out.
what it is, yeah.
Good points from the lawyer.
Always does.
Gary?
Yeah, just to comment that, certainly this will set up the town to acquire open space that has really been repeatedly supported through the master plan comments and so forth. And as people know, historically, we've missed those opportunities in the past for lack of preparation that this will provide now. We really need this.
Yeah,
It's an important point.
very true. Motion?
Sure. I move to sign letter of support for Community Preservation Committee land acquisition application.
Second?
Any more discussion? I vote yes.
Clay, yes.
Ben, yes.
Deirdre, yes?
Gary, yes.
Another unanimous vote for the letter of support for the town's application to the CPC. Discussion on the Finance Committee capital budget recommendations.
So, before we get to that, the first part of the memo that's in the packet talks about the potential need for additional meetings. So I think that
I'm all messed up.
we could, I'm asking the board if they're available to meet on February 22nd. Really anytime. We can do regularly, it's outside of your regularly scheduled, so we could meet early in the day if that's preferable, or we could keep the 6:30 start. We can do it via
Is it
Zoom.
Thursday?
This
Is that a
is,
Tuesday or?
I think
It's
it's a Thursday, the
Thursday.
22nd.
And it was then, or what was the other alternative?
well, anytime on Thursday.
So that's the day, hoping
Oh,
that
I see.
that day
I mean,
works.
I could do Friday too, if that's better.
Why don't we do a Zoom at Thursday at like 6:30? Does that work for you,
Does anyone have any,
Ben?
can we do it earlier for anybody?
Deirdre?
Sorry, I'm just trying to think. It's school vacation week.
Yes.
Sorry, what are we doing at this meeting? How long is it roughly?
Probably not more than an hour, maybe only a half hour. So what I'm proposing, what I'm hoping to do is to have, so we're going through, later on in this meeting, we're gonna go through the warrant. And we have, obviously, the various requests that have gotten from the boards, and, the I think you don't have to make your final decision tonight, but I think if we can get a general direction and the ones that we're definitely going to include, so then that way I can, kind of pressure, KP has these, but we don't have another response yet, but pressure them to get our articles drafted for the non-routine ones, but then incorporate all the actual numbers for the capital plan, the water transfers, the cemetery transfers, the old bills, like just really build the warrant out and apply commentary to the bottom of each for, pretty much every article, including the non-routine articles that we know we're gonna go forward with. So the board has an opportunity to go through them. We can go through one by one. I can answer any questions on the finance, particularly the finance-related articles, so that when we're coming into the 27th, the select board, which is the joint meeting with the finance committee, and so that meeting will be needed for the two boards will go through the finance related articles together and make their final recommendations for town meeting. So the recommendations being at the bottom of each article, it says select board recommendation and it counts the votes, and it says finance committee recommendation and it counts the votes. So select board will determine what the article is going to be, and then the two boards will make their recommendation.
Are we also meeting the 20th, that Tuesday?
No.
Okay, so we're not, so it would be the 22nd instead of the 20th?
Yep.
Okay. And would we be appointing these fine people that night also?
We could if the board wants to. I'm certainly not
Yeah,
opposed
so
to it.
I assume that we needed that extra meeting because we haven't had a time to focus on the things that we need to answer and finalize, so.
Yeah, it's definitely warrant
it's-
focused.
It's warrant focus, so it depends on whether we do it at the 20th or the 27th, because we're meeting the
There's
27th.
Oh,
and
okay.
It's our
just-
regular.
27th is the
so-
regular.
27th is the
Okay.
regular meeting.
Right.
Got it.
And so you know the
22nd is an extra
continuation
meeting.
of the time frame. So if we met on the 22nd, we'd do what I just outlined.
Mm-hmm.
And we come on the 27th, we go through the warrant with the finance-related articles with the FinCom. Two boards have their discussion, ultimately arrive on individual recommendations, because it's a vote count. And then we will come back we can't have our regularly scheduled meeting on the 5th because of the state
Election.
election. So we're proposing to move it to Monday night. And at that point, you would be presented with what would effectively be the final warrant in its complete form, to kind of give it your stamp of approval, and then it would go to the printer the next day.
Okay.
I can do the 22nd, except not between 3 and 5 p.m., but any other time that day I could do by Zoom.
5 works for me.
Totally flexible.
5:30. Deirdre, she's got school vacation week, she doesn't know.
I know, right? Yeah, that's okay.
Good.
Gary's good. Let's try to go for 5. Once you look at your calendar,
In person,
ideally, right?
Zoom,
Zoom.
Be a hybrid.
hybrid.
Well, I think this one we're gonna just do Zoom for ease of
The 22nd?
scheduling.
Oh, the 22nd.
All Zoom.
Okay.
22nd.
You'll
However, if
Zoom.
you want it in person, I'm fine with it.
I think it's either going to
No,
be
Zoom's
hybrid or all
fine.
Zoom. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Just trying to be
Yeah, I don't really
clear.
like hybrid.
So
So
I'll Zoom.
if Zoom
I
works
agree.
better, let's just plan to do a virtual.
Mhm.
All right.
Please.
Okay.
And what did we say? 5:30. Did we?
You said 5, but 5:30 is fine. What
They're letting you
got?
at home.
5:30 better?
I just said I couldn't do it between 3 and 5.
3 and 5,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
So let's say
I don't-
5:30.
Yeah.
Give you time to unwind.
Yes.
So 22nd,
Okay.
perfect. And you'll look at the agenda and see where we're going to put in the climate action, whether it's the 22nd or the 27th, because they're both town meeting heavy.
Okay.
Okay. All right, that was the first part.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah, we
The,
lost you for a minute.
yeah, so basically then I just went through, the piece of information that are coming together that we don't have yet that will be on, hopefully the recap on the 22nd. And if not, some of the stuff will still be flowing in that we'll have to cover on the 27th. And then finally, I discussed the Finance Committee's recommendations. So they seem to oppose, I don't know if Jeff wants to add any color to it, but they oppose the budget software, the new website, the police firearms, and you're still considering the tracking. I
Haven't received any new information on that, so I'd say the 4 items.
Those four. I don't know, do you want to add any? Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah, so at the last Finance Committee meeting, we ran through the operating budget, town and schools, just to get kind of take a temperature on where folks were at. No one voiced any specific objections to the operating budget and the school budget, but there was a consensus around those 4 items that were just mentioned. And I think it's in the context of the fact that we're looking at a tax increase that would be to the levy limit. It's the first year that the Fields project debt will be added to folks' tax bill. And more generally, the idea of a level funded budget. So those 4 items that Steve was mentioning seemed more like nice to haves as opposed to needs. Specifically, I can go through a couple of them where we kind of looked at what the payback was, but generally that was the consensus, that looked more like nice to haves than needs, and given the tax increases, thought that folks might like to see a little less spending of free cash on those items.
If I could start by asking a question, we were funding all that with free cash.
Yes.
So it doesn't save anybody's taxes by not taking those 4 articles.
Sure, but it
That's what
reserves the money for, I think, what the committee generally thinks of as a better use.
Anybody? Are we having a discussion? You're just explaining it?
Yeah, I was just
I think
offering,
if you have any questions.
I was just offering a little color.
Yeah, if there's any color questions or.
Yeah, with respect to the fuel tracking, we were told that it might save 2 to 2.5 hours a month of Rich Souza's time. So the payback on that $25,000 software expenditure, it looks like about 9 years. And then with respect to the weapons, it seems like the current weapons are working just fine. It was presented as the ammunition for the 9mm, a little cheaper than $40 caliber, and also maybe a little less kick. And if you did the math, the payback on the $22,000 for the weapons is 15 years. So thought that it just didn't seem like a great investment. And then the other 2 were a little more nebulous.
Gary?
A question for Steve. The fuel tracking system.
Yeah.
Watching the meeting on Zoom, that a lot of it revolved around accountability of the issues. But I guess as a technical question, wasn't the software a mechanical need in there as well, that the system needed an update or?
Well, I think, from my understanding, the Fuel Master software that he's looking at does, it obviously it monitors the fuel, but
it does a lot more. But the question is, my impression previously was that the current system was no longer going to be supportable, or
the current
was
system, as far as I know, is totally mechanical.
Right.
So like you go to get a pump, you go to pump gas, and you turn your key, and there's like this whole grid of keys. And you put your key in, the appropriate key, and you turn it, and then you pump your gas, and then it tells Rich how many units, right? So he writes down the starting and the ending units, and then calculates how many units each key was pumped. And I'm not sure that we calculate how, so this software does, obviously calculates it for you, but takes it a step further, and that it's, theft prevention with, you know, if you have a card, like right now, if you have a key, you could go put a key in and pump, you know, 200 gallons of diesel.
But the current structure is functional as far as we can tell into the future?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, yeah.
So I did know that that also has something to do with the green communities. The fact that we're a green community, is that not what Jeff Soulard said? This is.
I don't
it has-
recall that.
Yes.
There
in the
is something
FinCom
that
meeting.
this fuel tracking software has something to do with maintaining our green communities
Okay.
designation.
I know we did ask a couple of follow-up questions. I think we're still waiting for a
Okay.
response. But one was, were other automated solutions considered, and at what cost?
And
also,
I just have to jump in there and go, I would assume at this point, before it went into the capital plan,
Yeah.
that it had been vetted and they did price different options out. That's what I would assume.
Right. And the other question was, is that a one-time expense, or is there
Annual
annual
maintenance.
cost of maintenance, so that we know what the full cost is? And yes, maybe those answers would come easily, but they were just asked late last week, and
Right.
I think there's
Right.
been other focus in the office for the last couple of days.
Anybody else have anything on the fuel tracking software?
No.
On the fuel tracking specifically?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be helpful probably for all of us to hear more from Rich, who can probably explain this more eloquently. But I would say, to me, it seems that this is a type of financial control system, as well as an improvement in the reporting system for the green communities. And I do think that there is value in investing in financial controls. And I think three of the elements that we're talking about here collectively, because I can't speak to the firearms, that's outside of my wheelhouse by far. But the other three items are also about investing in Wenham's future and moving us towards best practice in a municipality, enabling us to deliver services better. And I do believe that there is value in doing that. And I appreciate the FinCom's looking for places to save money. But I'm not sure that sort of preventing us from moving towards best practice and better service delivery is the way to balance on that.
Well said.
And I have more specifics on the website in particular, but I know Ben probably does as well. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I have just food for thought that I would extend back to the FinCom through you, Jeff, with respect to the website in particular. And I'm sure that the FinCom, in considering these things, looked both at the quantitative piece, return on investment from a monetary point of view, as well as the qualitative return on investment from some of these expenditures. I think that the website expenditure is hard to analyze under a quantitative analysis. What is the financial upside of the money that we want to spend to update the website? I'm not sure that that's answerable, but I do think that there are a host of qualitative benefits that at least we hope will come from the new website. The main aim of the website change is to allow Wenham citizens to save time and lessen frustration in use of the website, and also I think to build confidence in the competence of the town in providing a user-friendly website. So just like one minor example that I've experienced myself before being on the board and even since being on the board, I think at one point I was trying to figure out the time of some town event. It may have been the Veterans Day event or something. And I Googled it on the town website, and the hits that came back were like prior years, times and dates. So it's sort of frustrating to try to figure out the current one. And our website has become sort of this like Christmas tree over the years where things are just added to it. And what we're hoping to do next week in selecting a particular vendor is one that has sort of a more tried and true streamlined website that will, I think, make it much more user-friendly for Wenham citizens. And certainly that's a centerpiece of our communications strategy as well. So I'd respectfully ask the FinCom to maybe reconsider its recommendation with respect to the website, just keeping in mind that I do think there are a lot of benefits that can't be measured in dollars and cents from the investment. Totally understanding what the role of the FinCom is, as Deirdre said, keeping an eye on the purse strings. But I did want to add those points with respect to the website in particular.
And I should have just added that my plan for our next meeting, which is Thursday, is to do a roll call vote so I can have more specific information about how many are in favor, how many out of favor, understanding that it's not final until we're together on the 27th.
Yeah, that's a good, 27th would be a good forum to discuss points and counterpoints and maybe come to a consensus, maybe not, but then see who.
Yeah, happy to take back any arguments in favor of these 4 items to the committee, so we can talk to some
Our
more.
website stinks. When we compared it to other sites, I mean, it's, and what we want to do is, as part of this communications plan, is have a site that lets people know what the heck's going on in town, and how they can help if they want to. And that's not happening on our website.
Deirdre has something.
So there was a comment at the FinCom meeting, something to the effect of, I don't think that taxpayers would want to pay for a new website, right? So as we mentioned, this would come out of free cash. This is not an override. We're not asking for additional money, so forth and so on, right? But I have to say that throughout the master plan process, one of the most repeated things that we heard from our residents is communication needs to improve. The website is challenging. We don't know what's going on. We can't find anything. So I disagree with that statement, and I actually think that a lot of people would be very supportive of having a new website with improved functionality. As I understand it, it's sort of an antiquated platform that's been built out so that the architecture of the site is all over the place. It's like a crazy octopus.
Well, I've had the same issues that Ben describes.
Right,
myself
we all
using
have.
it.
So there's almost like universal agreement that it's a bad website. So I guess I don't sort of understand the rationale of not wanting to address that, and particularly, and I just want to emphasize that we heard that a lot in the master plan process. Communication, communication, communication. Make it better.
Sure. I think it was consensus. I'm not saying it was unanimous, but you will have more information about where those 5 votes land after Thursday. But again, happy to take back and discuss as part of our meeting Thursday any additional arguments in favor.
Gary's got something.
Can we talk about beyond these 4 items? Because I want to just circle back to a meeting or 2 ago, that have we got the new AED defibrillator into the budget someplace?
No, that was not in the capital plan, the new AED.
But for $2,000 out of $22 million, how do we get that in, just so someday we save a life down at the COA?
I know. I was gonna, that, and I was gonna also bring up the possibility of reconsidering adding back in the basement to the COA after talking to Jim. I think that there's some really good ideas of what to do with the space in the future, but they all rely on us putting an elevator to get down there.
Yeah.
And the cost would be extensive, and with all the other debt and costs we have stacking up against us over the next 5 years, I'm just not sure that project is gonna bubble up to the top. So we have a relatively, we have a significant amount of free cash. I'm not just looking to spend it for the sake of spending it, but this might be, the year to kind of wrap up the COA. They got a new HVAC in there. They're getting a new rug on the first floor, do the basement, and then, they got a new entryway and a deck last year. So, I mean, I think the building's in decent, obviously the attic, there's always stuff to be done, but it was just as a thought. It's another 15,000.
Do you mean the 12,000 that was in the deferred projects for the flooring, or in addition to the 12?
No, in the deferred projects.
So the
To bring
12
that
or
back.
15?
Yeah,
Bring it up to 15?
whatever it was, yeah. I
Okay,
don't have
it was
in front of
12, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So so one other point before we move on, the budget software, my thought on that was very similar to the website. As the select board's, one of their primary goals is to increase communication and be more transparent, and this is a much easier way to look at the budgets. It's easier for the staff to input the budget, and it's just, it's another communication tool, and that's why I think it's there. But it sounds like there's going to be some changes on this capital plan.
Yeah, and that's part of the 22nd. So, like, the discussion
Yep.
here tonight, I wanted to bring up the COA flooring. Gary made a good point that I'd forgotten about the
The
AED,
AED.
so I can add that back in, or add it in at all. So that's probably about $4,000. COA flooring was 12. And again, I can bring that back to the board because the idea of coming out.
We're
of the 20
adding.
I know, right?
We're now adding
Well, no,
more
you figure
things.
FinCom. Well, FinCom. You guys freed up $85,000. Now we got to spend it.
Well, we want to keep that money in there, though. The only thing we
anyway.
haven't spoken to is the firearms, but I believe that would be something that Chief would have to speak
But I
to.
felt like I wanted to bring that up, and the AEDs are a good point. I think that was really highlighted our underpreparedness at the AED CPR training.
Which was very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But anyway,
Where
so
are
I
we on
can
the
make
rest of this?
these adjustments. We can talk about it on the 22nd. That's when the quote unquote the vote can be. So when we come on the 27th, everything's gonna be nice and tight, and basically there's no more real discussion after that. So any questions or concerns you have now, you can work on, address, wrap them up for the 22nd, and it's gonna kind of be
that's it.
it.
So Jeff is going to bring back to the FinCom. The Select Board wants everything, and now they're adding to the capital budget, so.
You won't send me as the representative.
Gary?
One other question. For the 22nd, are we talking reserve funds and OPEB as far as where to park some of the other money?
Yeah, so
Not to
we're
spend
getting
it,
to
but
that now. So more right.
Yeah.
So
The free cash.
that's the last point,
Right.
piece of the memo.
Go for it.
So exactly that. We gotta have a discussion, start it tonight. We have probably somewhere in the range of $2.2 to $2.3 million in a total free cash certification that's available for appropriation at this town meeting. I think the most prudent thing to do with it is to put a majority outside of the capital spending, to put a majority of what's left into a general stabilization fund. We currently have about 2%, I believe, is our balance. The Department of Revenue recommends communities of Massachusetts to maintain 5 to 7%. If you look outside, again, their revenue sources are more fluctuate more than Massachusetts because we're reliant so heavily on property tax. But when you leave Massachusetts, just to show that some of the communities the ICMA recommends, the GFOA, Government Financial Official Association, recommends a minimum of 2 months expenditures. So that would be a minimum of like 16 or 17%. So again, we're at 2. When you benchmark ourselves against our peer communities, I think the average is 6.8. Some being above the 7, a few at 5. It's in the memo. And but so I'm thinking get that to a 7% minimum, maybe a little bit more, and then you're kind of left with the what's left over. And really that's where I'd be deferring to the select board to either A, would you want to just put it all into stabilization, which I don't think is a bad idea, considering all the debt and, capital needs that are coming on a horizon around the schools and things like that.
Is this
You
what we're
could-
talking about on the 22nd?
Well, yeah, but also
But he's
starting the
explaining it to us.
conversation now.
So we know what to think about.
Okay.
And then OPEB is another, again, OPEB, and then you have your, you could do a tax rate offset. So you could essentially reduce the tax rate by a one-time contribution of free cash. So to, in theory, step into the athletic fields project. So roughly, I believe the athletic fields are going to equate to about 4% on the average tax bill. You could take about $400,000 or $500,000 and offset the tax rate with free cash to, to kind of step into the 4%. So the next year, instead of it going right to 4%, it would be like 1.5%, and the next year would be the 4%. So a 2-year, kind of a 2% step in. So optically, I think that looks good. We did get some questions last year about overtaxation at town meeting. So I mean, optically, I think, giving it back to offset the tax rate is probably not a bad look. However, when you look at our overall OPEB liability and, I guess when you quantify it, it's somewhat of a minimal impact on the tax bill. Although it looks good, you're kind of, pardon the phrase, with peeing into the wind. So, it may be better to sock it away for, the stabilization fund so that it's available, for whatever future needs may come down the line. Again, any questions, concerns, you
think
bring
about.
that up. Hop on a call, whatever, I know the FinCom is kind of, talking through that over the next couple of meetings. They're gonna have their ideas and, a recommendation for the board. So we can wait for that as well.
All right. So much fun stuff.
All right.
All right, so now we get to go to the warrant.
Yep. The first several pages of the routine articles, I don't see those changing, or the need for those. We need every one of them.
So the commentary that's in here is old?
The commentary that's in there is old. It's
Is old,
semi-updated.
okay. All right,
I've
so
been
don't
starting
look
to
at
go
it yet.
through.
Okay.
Yeah, those are just read the titles. The only one in there that's kind of a placeholder that we could take out, it doesn't look like we're gonna need it, is the borrowing authorization for town capital improvements. That will probably come out, once we have a clearer
Right.
picture
Yep.
towards the end of the month. But then the highlighted ones on the last page,
Yeah, I was gonna say, but nothing's here. Okay.
the planning board is still working through their inclusionary zoning. So this would require any subdevelopment to include a component, affordability component, typically around 10%. And what the holdup with that is Stoneham enacted inclusionary zoning and was challenged by a developer, and the courts found in favor of the developer. So KP Law is saying, it's not the ultimate precedent, but it does expose the town to some liability that in the future, if that you could end up right with a lawsuit like Stoneham if a developer came in and, the inclusionary, to way to circumvent the inclusionary zoning.
It's being appealed, right?
Yeah, it's probably but still, it's what we have right now. We have the ruling, and that's where we're at.
So that has to come from the planning board
Yeah,
anyway.
so that recommendation will come from the planning board.
Okay.
However, it's in there as a placeholder.
Mhm.
And then we have the two we've talked about before, moving from elected Board of Health to appointed Board of Health, and both for the Board of Health and the Board of Assessors.
I don't remember talking about that. I must have missed that meeting.
Yeah, so that, the intent of those is to not change, at least not initially, or, is not change who's on the boards or how the boards function. It's to give the town the flexibility to move into more of a regionalization model, which is also part of, we talked about this before, they even rolled out the Municipal Empowerment Act, but one of the things in there that they talked about was the allowing of regionalized boards of assessors. So to the extent that the state is willing to support this fully and allow for also the regionalization of reporting requirements for the boards of assessors, so that, right now we have a Hamilton and a Wenham assessor's office, so, we have a shared assessor, Todd, who basically has to do the job twice because the state won't combine the two communities. But if this is the direction they're going, it would position us to, we would have to go from elected to appointed, and then, go from appointed to a regional. And then similarly with the Board of Health, I've talked with Dr. Ting about it, and he's supportive of this idea, particularly around all the, I think the mandates we're gonna start seeing due to our performance analysis that the state, preparedness analysis that the state did on our health preparedness, and the requirements that are gonna come out of that, and then, in the next few years, that Hamilton and some of the other folks that we participate in some shared health services with, there was some interest in maybe forming a, instead of having a, 6 or 7 hour public health nurse in each community to to share services and be able to actually attack some of these mandates that the state's coming out with. Because, right now, we just have such a limited capacity, essentially no staffing in our Board of Health. You have the board and a couple, few hour a week folks that come in, and this would just kind of help us prepare and combine resources with communities and take advantage of grants and things like that to staff a full-time
I think
health department.
Dr. Ting actually pretty much promoted that.
Yeah, he's right. Yeah, we've been
When
talking
he
about
spoke
it.
to us, and it was very, very sincere, yeah.
Again, I'm not saying it's gonna happen or will happen, but it's kind of getting us prepared to take that next step. Plastic bag ban. This was a request from Deidre. I don't know if you want to add some color to that. I think it's pretty standard in this area. Pretty much every community has banned the plastic bags.
Yeah, it's sort of just trying to bring us up to par with what most other communities are doing. Most of the towns around us have not just the bag ban, but also have banned single-use plastics and things like that. But I thought if we at least could get started with a plastic bag ban and start sort of getting us caught up in terms of these type of environmental regulations.
Nobody's going to disagree with that.
Nope. And then the next one is a community septic loan program. I'm still working through the financial details, but this is something that the town of Essex does, and I think there's other communities that do it as well. And predominantly communities who adopt this are like Wenham, where they have a large majority of, or all of their parcels, they don't have any sewage, so it's all septic, and it's a resource for the residents to access low interest rate loans. I think it's somewhat subsidized by the state, or completely subsidized by the state, but I'm still working through that, and to, if they have a failed Title V, or they have a massive catastrophe and redo their septic, it's a resource for the residents, because it can be extremely, today's regulations, it can be,
That's a really nice idea. If that,
Yeah, can I just
Yeah.
speak to that also? Because I had asked for this to go on. The town basically acts as a gateway, so the town doesn't bear the financial responsibility. It's a state program and it's a state loan. So the town is like the gatekeeper. People would apply through the town, but the money actually comes from the state. So there's essentially no financial risk to the town. It's particularly helpful for senior citizens. If they have a failed septic, particularly, they can go and get a loan and access the funds, basically. I mean, anyone can do it, but it sounds like particularly seniors have been able to take advantage of it in a number of towns. And again, a lot of towns have this around us. Hamilton just adopted it at their special town meeting this fall. So I feel like it would be a really good resource for our people as well, essentially.
Awesome.
And then, so the other article so this was a request from the planning board, or the master plan advisory committee. They wanted to, through Margaret, they want to make a presentation at town meeting. So, Roger ultimately would be the one to allow a presentation. So we went to him, and he said that he would prefer the request come through as an article through the select board, so that he can take a vote to allow them. So
To give the town meeting the opportunity to either say, yes, we want to hear it, or no, we don't want to hear
Yeah.
it. That's his prerogative, yeah.
So it was recommended by the Master Plan Advisory Committee to have a presentation. And I think the idea is that Ann Weeks, Chair of the Planning Board, would give the presentation and basically just update everyone as to the status and near completion at that point of the master plan.
So will there be like a time, like a 10-minute presentation, a 5-minute,
I mean, I would hope so, yeah.
A little bit of a blurb so the town
I
meeting
think that's a
will
good
know.
idea,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can we do that for the school? Sorry.
Well,
Put an
the
article-
superintendent has the by right presentation, right?
Yeah.
So,
So it'd be nice if we could make it an article and say, no, we don't want to hear from you this year.
Don't want to.
Anyway.
and the other article is a placeholder and can be removed or left. I think for the street acceptance that we talked about tonight. The other one's the clarification of a junkyard, or what defines junk in a yard, and then took a stab at making a draft.
Is that a general or a zoning? Zoning?
I think
I see
zoning
now
at this
zoning,
point,
yeah.
right? We talked a little
Yeah, at this point, but I think that probably is something that we want to discuss if this were to be voted to go on the warrant at all, whether it should be a zoning bylaw or general bylaw. On that question, I want to look a little bit more closely with respect to prior non-conforming uses as they pertain to this subject matter, which may be a little bit different than a traditional zoning prior non-conforming use analysis. So I want to weigh in on that myself, maybe next time,
Right.
If possible.
Good.
Yeah, so I think the difference is what we're looking at is if this was passed as zoning bylaw. I talked to Rich Maloney, and he thought, it looked great. He was like, the more black and white you can be, the better. Because when I go out there, it's like, oh, that's lawn furniture. It's like, but it's been in a pile for 15 years. You know what I mean? It's like, well, what constitutes seasonal stuff,
Right,
and what,
right.
So, but, his concern was if it's zoning is folks that already occupied the 600 or 1,200 square feet of space with, it being all over the yard and not, abiding by any setbacks, are they grandfathered into that? But if it was right, if it's a local bylaw, then everybody has to abide. So I think that's just to give a background. That's what Ben's talking about.
And then just some further background, just with, I know we don't want to spend a ton of time on this right now, but just on some of the content of it. So this issue was highlighted recently on a matter that was before us that pertaining to the definition of junkyard in Wenham. Junkyards are prohibited in any zoning district, in all zoning districts of Wenham, and the zoning bylaws define a junkyard as a site that has 600 or more square feet of junk. And what was highlighted during this recent matter that came before us was that there's been sort of a blind spot, I guess you could say, in the zoning bylaw interpretation over the years, such that the interpretation has been that that 600 square feet or more being a junkyard is prohibited entirely, but if you have less than 600 square feet, it's been considered a by right type of situation, which I just pointed to a gap, I think, in the bylaws. So what this draft intends to do, and it takes into account some of the comments that we had as a board at the last meeting, where we talked a little bit about, maybe 200 square feet or some other factors. So I tried to take those things into account in here, but basically what this would do would be to say that 200 square feet of junk, which we define a little bit in here, up to 200 square feet is permissible as long as it is not in the rear or side yard setbacks and not in the front yard in any dimension. And so the way this is written, it says in the residential district, and then it would pertain, under this particular draft, it would pertain only to the residential district, which is, as we know, is most of the town. Outdoor storage or stockpiling of junk, discarded materials, refuse, scrap metal, scrap vehicles or vehicle parts, inoperable electronics or appliances, or construction debris is prohibited. That language, by the way, I did pull from some other town bylaws that tried to delineate a little bit what junk would include. So it would be prohibited, one, in the front yard of any lot, again, just in the residential district. Two, within the setback areas of any rear or side yard lot. So whatever the setback requirements are for the residential zoning district, you couldn't have any junk in those setbacks. And again, this is just how I've written it. It may be a policy question as to whether the board wants to do that or wants to propose that, or obviously it's town meeting that ultimately would approve this. And then three, prohibited outside of the setback areas of rear and side yard of a lot unless such stored or stockpiled materials do not exceed in a single location 200 square feet of ground coverage. So that's sort of the way I structured it, to say that you can have 200 square feet, up to 200 square feet, but only if it's not in the front yard or not in the setbacks of the rear and side yards. And then the next point is something that came up in that recent matter with respect to lots held in common ownership or control. The way I've drafted this says that the 200 square foot allowance would not double or triple if there were adjacent lots, that there'd be the same 200 square foot allowance for adjacent lots that are held in common ownership or under common control. The common control piece is where, you might have different entity names, but they're controlled by the same person, so it's technically different owners, but it's common control, which is a similar analysis that's done in terms of like merger doctrine and zoning. And then what is in here are 4 different exceptions, and again, this is just sort of based on conversation that we had at the last meeting, and also just thinking through what might make sensible exceptions to this 200 square foot rule. Exception 1 would be materials stored only seasonally or temporarily, and then it says for fewer than 4 months at a time. So if you think of things that maybe are just going to be stored somewhere during the winter months, but then put to use at other times of the year, that would be allowed, even if it were more than 200 square feet of coverage. 2 would be construction debris or materials stockpiled in connection with a properly permitted construction project, because we don't want to prohibit people from being able to do that if they have a properly permitted construction project. 3 is sort of a catch-all for just any materials that are stockpiled for fewer than 10 days, 10 consecutive days during a single calendar year. So I picked 10, but it could be, any number, but I think it's just sort of reasonable to say that if something's there for a short period of time, that it's not going to be an enforcement issue. And then 4, materials stored within a structure that itself is properly authorized. So if there's some kind of enclosure that's covering materials, as long as that enclosure or structure is compliant with zoning, then that would be an exception as well, where somebody could have more than 200 square feet if it's properly enclosed within a structure that itself is compliant with zoning. So that is,
Be precise.
yeah, that's how I drafted it, and, you know, just for discussion with the board, and obviously it would ultimately be town meeting's decision, and also, you know, KP Law, probably would want to take maybe a review of that as well.
So just a procedural question. Zoning bylaw amendment, does that need to go through the planning board and have a public hearing?
That's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah, it would. That's true. Yeah.
But whether it makes it on the annual town meeting or the next town meeting, because we're going to have a special this year
Special, yeah.
for the MBTA, but it's something
Yep.
to get I think an unbelievable, I understood everything you wrote.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
me
And
too.
it makes a lot of sense, maybe because we have that situation kind of in the back of our
Right.
mind, but really, I think it's really well done.
Okay,
I
thanks.
think it's a good start.
Yeah, and I think that the planning board point's exactly right. They would need to, if we were to pursue it as a zoning
Yeah.
bylaw amendment.
I
rather
think it
than
align
general.
with their inclusionary zoning, to have to hold a hearing for that.
Mhm.
Still,
Right.
probably could. If this is the direction, maybe it won't work, but if this is the direction of the board, I'll talk to Margaret in the morning and
Mhm.
see if we can get coordination going.
And what was, I think I misunderstood why it's zoning and not general, like, did we know?
There's a potential argument that if it's a zoning bylaw, there's a potential argument that a property owner could make that, oh, well, prior to the zoning bylaw being put in place, a property owner had, 400 or 500 square feet of junk in my yard for the last 20 years, and it was fine, and so I'm grandfathered.
With a zoning bylaw.
Yeah, I don't know that argument would actually work with respect to something like this. That's one of the thing I wanted to sort of take a closer look at myself. The quote-unquote grandfathering phenomena does not apply in a general bylaw
Right.
situation.
Isn't it currently this in the general?
Say again?
So the current version of this, is it in the general? I thought it was in the general bylaw.
No, I
Now
think,
it's in zoning?
Yeah, the only, right, yeah, the junkyard definition is in the zoning bylaw, and that's really the
Okay.
only
I thought it was in
sort
the
of
general.
connection that we have. I mean, it definitely is in the zoning bylaw definitions. It's possible that it's also in the general bylaw definitions, but I don't know. I don't
Okay.
think so, but I don't know for sure.
Could be remembering wrong, but is going from 600 to 200, just sort of thinking about what people might say, is this sort of standard? Do other towns use?
Honestly, the 200 was just a number that seemed like it might be reasonable, and I guess it's just probably in the eye of the beholder, whether that's reasonable.
I suppose KP Law would be able, once they look at it, they would probably know, like, oh, most places do 250. I
Yeah,
think that when they
right.
do the
They might
review,
have
they
some
might have
insight
some
on
insight on
Yeah,
that.
they
Or
might
no
have
one's
some
below
insight.
400 or whatever the
right.
sort of,
Yeah, that's true. And it may be that many towns have nothing like this. It's just, again, it was the peculiarities of our definition and the way it's been enforced that, at least in my mind, sort of raised the issue of clarification, maybe being
I think it's
appropriate.
a great idea.
I like it.
like
I
it.
think it's great. Thank you
Okay.
for doing this.
Sure.
Can you just, sorry, one more thing. Can you just explain what that means within the setback areas of rear or side? I thought we
Yes.
didn't have setback.
So, and I don't know how many feet.
I think it's 15, isn't it?
Is it
generally?
15 for rear and side? Yeah.
That you can't,
So
Yeah, 10 or 15.
your boundary line,
right.
you got a fence or something there, you can't put your junkyard up against the fence.
Oh, specific to the, that's what I'm trying to
Yeah,
figure out.
it's-
Okay,
it has to
specific
be away
the
from your
junk.
boundaries.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, right, so just like you can't have right, so just like you can't build a garage within a setback area or a shed.
You're not supposed to have your junk there
Yeah,
either.
so that would
Or a
also
chicken coop,
apply to
right,
the,
yeah.
Okay.
apply to the,
Got it.
to the junk.
Our garage, it's on the setback line. Who knew?
Who knew?
All right, you ready?
Well, so we have another article, right?
Yep, 2 more.
Sorry.
Select 2 more?
Gary, did you have any
No,
feedback on the junk?
One more, but we're going to add Gary's I think.
Oh, Gary has something too? So we had select board authorization to purchase open space
Yeah, so this is
parcels.
the second, yeah, right, so the last one on the sheet is the second piece to the CCC application. Granting the select board authorization to acquire. So what this does is it prevents having to go back to town meeting to get authorization to acquire. So the authorization to acquire one of those 6 parcels will already be there, and the authorization to issue the debt against CPC funds will already be there. So we don't have to go back. If one of these parcels were to come up for sale, and we could purchase it for the X amount of dollars you have available to you, you wouldn't need to go back to town meeting for any additional approval. You could just move forward, negotiate, and purchase the property. And lastly is the bylaw to, I guess, clarify duties and responsibilities of officers on each board, right? Like the
On
clerk,
committees,
vice-
yeah. Right. We'll finalize that for the 22nd, right?
Does that sound?
The duties or just the structure?
Is that what we
We didn't finish talking about the
Yeah.
duties. We never came back to
It
Yeah.
came up in the minutes, so did we finish this?
I thought the bylaw was to create the structure, that you have to
Yeah,
have chair, vice chair,
Yeah, so
clerk.
I think the bylaw would be to standardize the structure,
Right.
and then the duties could follow on. I think it's the structure, the more important point. You know, I think people kind of recognize what a treasurer does or
Yeah,
so
all
forth.
right.
Yeah, all right, so we'll get it written up before the 22nd.
This, there's not a number. This authorization to purchase open space parcels, but it would be within the list, essentially?
Yeah, so it would give, right, it's the authorization, you have to, I went to bond counsel about this. You have to specify a parcel or parcels. So in this case, it's multiple parcels, 6 parcels. You also have to specify a dollar amount to not exceed. So, you know, like, let's just say hypothetically, the CPC allows us the debt service to borrow $2.7 million, and we have the $1.5 million in the conservation, you know, those two together, whatever, $4.2 million. So we probably would put a not to exceed amount of $4.2 million. So the select board could spend that $4.2 million to acquire one of those parcels without additional town meeting approval, because if none of this was done, you'd have to
Right.
pull together a special town meeting, get authorization, and then go negotiate. You know, so this is to kind of be able to try to negotiate when, you know, there's a potential that the property might come for sale, so you can, you know, talk to the sellers and have capital behind you, and you're kind of ready to go, opposed to waiting for a right of first refusal to get triggered. So by this point, for a right of first refusal to get triggered, they've already marketed the property. They already have an offer in hand for the property. So the town has the right of first refusal at that negotiated price. Right, so it's for a negotiated, well, it is for a negotiated price of change of use, so it's for development. So, you know, to the extent you can get out ahead of that and, you know, convince or persuade, or, you know, maybe they don't want to go through the marketing and, you know, the whole developer thing with contingencies on amounts of lots and things like that, that you can, you know, buy it before it gets to that point. And that's kind of what we're trying to position ourselves to be. And also, you know, obviously there's more than 6 parcels in town, but this is kind of like, we're just trying to start to get ready. So we pick these 6 and maybe we can do more, and, you know,
But the article will specify those.
Yes.
My concern would be people are not necessarily going to want to vote for sort of a blank check to go
no,
do
it's
whatever.
6, it's gonna specifically specify those
Okay.
6 articles, and we can even have
Parcels.
parcel map
Okay.
associated in the appendix, so folks can see exactly what we're talking about.
So it's
We can
very
have
clear.
Associated acreage, we can have, you know, all that
Okay.
type of stuff, and that all goes in the commentary that we'll put together, and we can have an appendix, so whatever the board
Okay.
feels like they want to see, we can put together.
So is it possible for us to add an article to clarify the CPC terms? Did we
Oh,
get, is
you mean
that,
what Michelle raised
Yep.
at the beginning?
So, I don't
Oh,
know what
actually-
happened through the AG. Did it get
What
rejected?
it was
Did
is,
it-
no, so what it was the town, well, Jane, I can't remember now if he was the temporary town clerk or if he
Right,
was the clerk.
wrote
But
the
anyways, the clerk who wrote the minutes had a different opinion as to what the, so it was, remember, there was like,
Mhm.
there was a motion and then there was an amendment to the motion, there was an amendment to the amendment.
amendment.
So it went through, it passed legal review, it went to the state, and they accepted it. So then, when it came back to us, I'm not sure how Michelle Bailey, because it was relatively soon after we got a copy of it. Michelle Bailey, or actually it might have been Pat Waddell, said that's not what we said. So we went back, we looked at the tape, or I looked at the tape, and Joe looked at the tape, and Michelle, and we're all like, well, I think, what do you think? And I go, I think he's right. So I think that, that wasn't the intent. Kristen watched the tape, so it's so clear that she's willing to sign off and attest as the town clerk that is, was not what the motion was. And then we would refile the legislation for the amendment to the
Didn't
bylaw.
we talk about this about 2.5 hours ago?
With Michelle, yeah.
She brought it up.
Right.
But so why does it have to go back to town meeting?
Diane's trying to figure out a way to solve
The
it
two,
quicker.
you have two options.
Okay.
Do what Kirsten wants to do, and just, right, so then she got sick, and so that's why it's all pushed back. But do what Kirsten wants to do, she's gonna attest to it, we're just gonna refile. I don't think anyone foresees any issues, and we'll be done with it. The other option is to revote in a town meeting, so basically what I think Diane is proposing.
Because I think it's cleaner if you have an article and you just revote it and it's clear. Otherwise, you have minutes from a meeting, an AG, an amended thing from the AG, and then it's just 20 years from now, someone's gonna look back and go, what happened? What'd they do? Because it was super confusing. So if we could make the article smoother, easier, and then I just think that would be a smoother, easier way to go. But yet, I never understood that article and the terms at all, so I can't be one to say that was what I wanted. Why we can't jump into that?
I'm thinking either one gets the job done. So if the board has a preference, I can put it on there as a placeholder for now, because we're closing the warrant,
Yeah,
and
Why don't we placehold it,
pull it.
Okay.
Or whatever you guys want.
and then you can get input from Kirsten,
and just,
Michelle, maybe. I think Michelle made the motion at town meeting, which is,
she made one of the amendments.
she made one of the
One of
amendments,
the
yeah.
amendments, and then the amendment to the amendment, and then it.
Right.
Yeah. And it was just a tough time, and we had so many temporary things, and it got confusing. I think it was maybe the last article, so we really lost it. So, do we need to vote to put that on there? No. We're just gonna add it to here, and then we're gonna vote to close it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's probably appropriate.
Is there anything else we can think of that we wanna add?
We've got a good list, I think.
Yeah.
We're doing okay.
Awesome. I think it's good. You wanna try to, I mean, ideally, you get everything done at one annual town meeting. Let's get it all done, as long as we don't dawdle the town meeting. So, I would entertain a motion to close the warrant for the annual town meeting for April 6th.
I move that the Wenham Select Board vote to close the April 6, 2024 town meeting warrant.
Second?
Any more discussion? I'll vote yes.
Claire, yes.
Ben, yes.
Deirdre, yes?
Terry, yes.
It's unanimous. Our town meeting warrant is set.
Can I just talk about minutes for a second?
Before you talk about minutes, were we supposed to talk about this? Where did this come from? The firefighter,
Oh.
we missed
right.
that. Can we put that off?
Well, it's technically got to reopen the warrant and add it.
Oh.
Oh, whoops.
Well,
I move,
you've got to reopen the warrant anyhow for the final vote on the
So I guess we can
22nd.
talk
so-
about it briefly now and then just add it in when. So yeah, so this is it's Mr. Police Fire Chief Kavanaugh dropped this off my desk. This is a kind of like a memo or a newsletter that goes out to all participants in the Essex County retirement. And this is a new regulation that they passed to allow what appears to be awarding of, well, the way it goes now is the way they recognize service for on-call firefighters is a little ambiguous, and they'll take the town meeting. They take like the prior town reports, they take the hourly wage and they divide it by the amount of hours you worked on your W-2. Like, this is going back into like the 80s, like a long time ago, when we just, like, the records don't really exist anymore. So this is a way for them to, I guess, kind of systematically take, if you're like an on-call firefighter and you can show that you showed up for 1 hour, right? Because the argument's always been like, well, I'm only getting 1 hour's worth of credit, but I was there for half the day, or I had my whole day was tied up because I was on call, or this, that, and the other thing. So this allows them to get credit for those hours in like a more defined formula. So if you get called for 1 hour, you get 1 day's worth of service. And if you have 15 calls in 1 month, you get a full month's worth of service. And so what that is that you want to build a bank of service, because it wasn't pensionable earnings back then. However, if it's municipal service, you have the right to purchase years of service. So they'll take whatever the rate of pay and whatever the required contribution would have been back then, and obviously adjust it for inflation. But you come up with, all right, so 1 year's service from 1985 is going to cost you X. This is the recipient. So like in this case, the fire chief could purchase it, say it's $2,000, you get a year's service. So that $2,000 would equate to, when you're towards the end, another 2.5% in your pension, because an additional year's service, if you're not capped at your 80%, would move you up another 2.5%. So that 2.5% could be worth, depending on what you make, you could have the payback would be less than 1 year by purchasing that, because if you went from 100 to 102,500 and it cost you $2,000 to purchase it, right? So in 1 year you've already paid yourself back what it cost to purchase. So that's why like this time is a big deal for the folks that have gone from call service to full-time municipal service, where it doesn't really make a huge impact when you're looking at an average, because it's your 3-year average of your top 3 years of earnings. So if you're looking at an individual who was on call for 20 years but worked as an electrician, it's never pensionable. It doesn't really make sense. They may have got to a point where it triggered the pensionable amount of earnings, but you're talking about percentage of such a small dollar amount that they're still going to want to buy back, but it becomes a little different. But when you're in a situation where you're in a salary position making significant amounts of money, now it starts to make sense. So he wants something like this. He wants the boards to entertain the thought of adding it to the warrant. Right now, the only other community who's adopted this is the town of Essex.
So we all have this little thing, this just late ad. We should look this up and then
Yeah.
discuss it and bring it up.
And that's it. So the email I sent to you guys includes, it's interesting to read, and I can talk about it again. It's late, but we can do another night. Is the minutes? We're able to find the minutes that the Essex County Retirement Board discussed this and talked about pros and cons. Ultimately, they took the vote to adopt it, but there's like 3 minutes that kind of leads up to the adoption.
All right. So let's move on to minutes. Pete, you had something to say on the minutes?
So I've looked at them all, and I congratulate, this is before the meeting started, and I congratulated the service, and then I was told that actually Gary's the one who makes these minutes perfect.
So let's go through each one. Yeah. So November 21st. Anybody have anything?
I've read them all. They're perfect.
So just one thing that K, on that one, potential vote to adopt a uniform committee charge template. Did we ever finish that?
Sorry, which one?
The uniform committee?
No, we did not.
Okay. Just, we can put that on a list to bring back at another time. Anyone have any issues with November 21st?
Well, DeFranco was spelled wrong in the first section.
correct the spelling difference. Where is that? The
And I
first
don't,
section?
I'm not on the page, but the section on the pond discussion, it seemed to just sort of end. There wasn't like, what did we do? Didn't we have like a follow-up or a next step or something? No?
No.
No, we
because
waited for the next, we waited for the
It rolls
following.
to the next meeting, where
Okay.
we had,
All right.
We waited for the
Yeah,
Concom. The board agreed to wait until after the Concom meeting where other,
Okay.
yeah. Where's Franza spelled wrong?
I think it was on the front page.
Oh, as a guest.
Lost
As a
track of
guest.
where they.
Yeah, under the guests.
As a guest. Do you see that, Gary? Andrew DeFranza.
The
Oh, yeah.
Franzer.
right.
Okay.
And I have a general comment about all of them. I'm pretty sure that it's part of the OML that you're supposed to include a list of documents that are referenced or associated with the meeting, so none of our minutes have had document list from the packet. So I'm pretty sure that's part of the OML. The one that I'm not sure about, whether it's an OML issue or not, is even though executive session minutes are separate, I'm not sure whether you have to, it seems like you have to state that there was an executive session, and I think one, I don't know which meeting, but we had a lot of executive sessions. I think the minutes should say that there was one.
Right, I think that, I have seen that when we called to order, and then they went to
Right.
executive session, and then they come
Well, in
back.
Catherine's world, we always had, it was always in there.
No, but I think
you
that
think
we've
they
had
were
it-
in here?
I think so, but I don't remember whether we're missing any executive.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I didn't get that far, but I wanted
So
to
that's,
flag
yeah,
it.
that's the question. So the additional log of items, whether the packet itself satisfies that, and that,
I don't think so. I think you actually have to list.
all right, so in the minutes, then we'll have to just,
You know communities that do that? Does Hamilton do that?
Manchester?
Yeah, and Catherine's always did that, our previous recording
Let's
secretary.
look into, let's look into, I think you might be right. I think so, we should
Pretty
just,
sure about the minute, the
list.
document
The
list.
documents.
I'm not
list
sure
of
about the
documents.
executive session, but
I think the executive session should be too, but I don't know if we're missing
yeah,
any.
I'm not sure.
So we should, I don't know how to rectify that. That's, maybe we should make a call into the attorney of the day. Open meeting law. Yeah, so we've noticed that our minutes aren't including our list of documents. We'd like to correct that. What's the best way to do that?
Because Lauren's the expert, right? Lauren Goldberg.
You can call Lauren, or you can call just the attorney
Oh, the
general.
hotline, like,
Yeah, the
hotline.
attorney of the day. They give you great,
Oh, really?
oh, yeah, yeah. They usually give it to you in an email too, so you have it. So, November 21st, let's go to the 28th. Any comments on the 28th? I thought it was fine.
I didn't have any.
Okay, December 5th. I also didn't have a comment on December 5th. December 6th. Gary, you have been busy, huh? We'll talk about that in a minute. December 19th, I have my name is spelled wrong.
whereabouts? Right up front?
Yep, right
Yep,
on.
yep, missing
Yep.
N there.
Also on this one, on D, the Wenham Park, Pingree Field discussion and vote on pickleball play hours, et cetera. We just gonna, Sean has to get back to us on pickleball hours. And I'm asking because it's posted all over Facebook and in pickleball groups that the certain hours, but I don't recall that we agreed to any.
No, he's gonna be here the 27th.
Okay. Thank you. So those are all of our minutes. Motion to approve the minutes
I
from,
move to approve the select board minutes of 11/21/2023, 11/28/2023, 12/05/2023, 12/16/2023, 12/19/2023.
Second?
Pending the noted corrections.
thank you, with the noted corrections, seconded. That was a lot of minutes, or a lot of meetings. I vote yes.
Peter, yes.
Ben, yes.
Deirdre, yes.
Gary, yes.
Unanimous vote to approve all those minutes with those changes. Before we end, how much work are you doing on the minutes after we get them from the minute taker?
So I find that to verify what's written in the draft that comes to us, that you really have to sit down and compare it against the video.
So what's the difference between you doing the video and writing the minutes?
Yeah, well, essentially, it takes about 2 hours to do this meeting. And I find that the problems that I see with the company is, one, that they do not have insight as to what's important, what's not important, and two, that in some cases, they don't know the lingo for municipal activities, so that, council versus council, earmark becomes airmark, and, so it's a difficult job to not have
Right.
the technical information and yet try to translate it. And, you could see someone outside that, oh, Dr. Ting gave a briefing, they need that word for word, whereas we know that, it was general subjects and just general discussion, and we could summarize that, so.
So I do know that some communities are using the Zoom
Yeah, so what we talked
Closed
about was
captioning.
just getting the,
and then doing the same kind of thing
Yeah.
you're doing right now.
so just get the total right out of it, and that way just cut out, rather than having to look back and forth as to,
I'm pretty skeptical that that's going to be any more efficient.
I don't think it's efficient. It'll work,
Yeah.
but it's not efficient if it's taking you that much time
Yeah,
as
'cause
a
it's-
volunteer,
it's
because
not.
who's going to do it after you?
I mean, did Hamilton, maybe we'll see, supposedly have a few minute takers?
or the other solution too is to look into, what the state rules are as to, using a ChatGPT summary. Just let the software give you the printout, and my understanding is in some states, you can have it almost simultaneous as the meeting goes on, that it prints out a
closed caption.
summary, which is said.
The problem, I think, with that is it doesn't identify the speakers, so it becomes just like a wall of text. What I just finished saying would have been like there's no disconnect. You don't know when you stopped and I started. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we got to find a better solution, though, because
Well, I'll call Joe and see if
But-
if their pool, if that's working out. I don't know how it's how is it working out over there?
are you part of the pool?
I am.
So she's not going to be writing our minutes.
No.
No, well, I'm saying if they have folks that are interested in doing that type of work and can offer more work, I don't know.
I'm not sure how deep the pool is at the moment, so that's one question. I think it's a good idea, the way they've structured it, and there could be some potential to combine and have a shared pool. It's worth exploring.
Okay. All right. I don't know about you guys, but it's 8:57. You adjourn us, don't you?
Oh, yeah, so I move to adjourn the February 6th Select Board meeting at 8:57.
Second.
All in favor? Diane, yes?
Pete Clay, yes.
Ben, yes.
Deirdre, yes?
Gary, yes.
Thank you guys all so much.
Thanks.